an overview of all of Houston's historic districts. My name is Miriam Hijazi. I've been helping people buy and sell residential real estate for over 12 years, and I have been loving Houston since 1987. Let's get into it. So, this is an overview of all of the houses in historic districts, or rather, all of the historic districts. There are 22 in Houston, and if you are buying or you are considering looking at houses in historic districts, you need to know that if you want to make any significant changes to this structure that you're purchasing, I say structure because not all historic protected and historic communities are only residential. You need to know that you're going to have to get special approval from the Houston Archaeological and Historic Commission. If you don't like being told what to do with your property, you should not buy a house in a historic district. If you don't like old houses, you should not buy a house in a historic district. If you don't like old houses, please don't buy an old house. Please buy a lot and build your own new construction house. So again, this is an overview. I will eventually make and cover information on all the different historic districts in the coming weeks and months. So this is just a broad overview of everything historic that Houston has to offer. Alrighty, here we are on the City of Houston historic map. And of course, you can look this up on your own, but I will be your tour guide for right now, and you can feel free to dive in further after this video if needed. So all of the dotted areas you see are, as you can see from the legend, historic districts on the National Register here in Houston. And so there's some areas that are not neighborhoods that are national historic sites, as you can see, and the colored in spaces, of course, are all the actual residential neighborhoods. So let's get into it. Let's start on the south side, and I'm going to give you kind of a general ballpark on price range. Now, I'm making this video in June of 2025, and so prices are going to adjust over time. This could not be accurate in a couple years, or it could be accurate. You never know, and we don't know what the market is going to do. So generally, Broadacres, right here, it's super gorgeous. This is where North and South Boulevard is, and it's going to have incredibly beautiful old oak trees that the canopy is almost like grown over. It's grown over the streets, and it's kind of grown together. And I think they have a binder, if I'm not mistaken, they have a binder system on every single oak tree in Broadacres and Boulevard Oaks. So Broadacres, Boulevard Oaks. So the price point here is going to be in the multi-millions. You're going to be hard pressed to find anything that starts with in the 1 million range. There are definitely still houses, and there could be houses in the future depending on what the market does. There could be houses in the 1.9 or 1.7 range, but generally speaking, in these general areas, you're going to be looking at least in the $2 million price point. And then our other little guy down here is Shadow Lawn. And of course, this is Rice University. It's walking distance, so a lot of university professors live over here, a lot of oil and gas execs. It's in great proximity to the Houston Medical Center. All right, so let's go up. We have Avondale, Courtland Place, Westmoreland, and First Montrose Commons. I have sold a couple houses over here, but they actually happened to be just in between the historic districts. And while the owners of those houses do love old houses and they did buy an old house, they don't necessarily have to grapple with the Historic Commission, which sometimes could be fine and sometimes could be really tough. There's actually a great debate going on in the Courtland Place Historic District. It's one of the oldest residential areas in all of Houston, and they're wanting to build the first ever spec house on Courtland Place. And I actually happened to go to the Houston Archaeological and Historical Commission meetings, and I have been to probably about 70% of the meetings in the last year and a half. And I did recently witness the last 2 meetings where there is quite the heated debate about this one house in question. They want to demo one of the old houses, and they want to build a spec house and put it on the market. And a lot of the current residents have lived there for a very long time, and they are all mostly opposed to it. I find this stuff very, very interesting, and I find I can best serve my clients when I am most informed, and that's why I attend these meetings. And then we have Avondale. And so first Montrose Commons and Westmoreland, these are going to be in this price point, generally speaking, is going to be $498, maybe $550-ish, all the way up to $1 or $2 million. You'll be able to definitely find some stuff below $2 million, maybe even below 1.5. It's important to know that Houston does not have zoning, and it is a blessing and a curse. It gives you a lot of freedom, but it also makes everything kind of a patchwork quilt. And when I'm putting houses on the market in this area, in order to find comparable sales, you really kind of have to just do a best guess. Sometimes there's not always a perfect comparable property to base your price on. And this is really a patchwork quilt over here. Some of these old houses have been incredibly well maintained, and some of them are falling down, and they do unfortunately need to be demoed, or an incredibly heavy renovation needs to happen. This is going to be pretty walkable if you are concentrating on a walkable neighborhood. This area is generally walkable within the community. You can get to a couple little restaurants, but you're not really going to be able to get to work unless you work at Rice University. Then you can definitely walk to work. And then this area is going to be a very densely packed and populated part of the city. And remember that the closer to downtown you are, generally speaking, the older the structure will be, because the oldest part of Houston started in the center of Houston, which would have been close to downtown. So we're gonna move up a little bit. Now we get into the wards. This is Freedman's Town. This, you'll have to read on the history. They have brick streets here, and Freedman's Town refers to freed slaves, actually, that lived here and when it was originally developed. I actually don't know a ton about that. I should know more. Sorry. Alrighty. So next, Old 6th Ward. Now this is actually a really charming little community. I have done a couple deals here. You're gonna have mostly pre-World War II structures here. Again, because you are much closer into downtown, this would have been developed earlier in Houston's history. So you're gonna have cute little bungalows, and your price point is going to be probably below $1 million. It just depends if it's like really fancy and it's been heavily redone or expanded upon, then it might be over $1 million. But generally speaking, you should be able to find something in the 500 to 900 range. And then we have High First Ward. This is very small, and this is the same price range over here. And then we move into some of the most populated historic districts, and since there's a ton of people that live in this corner of town, look at all of this compared to what we just came from. These are much, much, much smaller communities. We actually, we have a lot of houses here, and the more houses, the more people, the more problems. And when people want to expand and they find out they're in a historic district, we actually see the highest volume at the Houston Archaeological and Historic Community Committee meetings. Most of the cases are centered around the Heights. So we have Woodland Heights, which is actually my favorite because of all the beautiful, beautiful oak trees. What can I say? I'm a Sagittarius. And I love old trees. At least that's what the horoscopes say. They say that Sagittariuses love trees. So Woodland Heights is my favorite. In Germantown, this, for its name, a lot of German immigrants settled here, but in the 60s when I-45 came through, it actually was a mass exodus just because of this. I mean, this is a humongous highway. Norhill Historic District. If you live in Norhill or if you're looking for a house in Norhill, just know that if you have any plans of expansion, your plans may be met with an absolute brick wall of a no. Currently, the HOA or the community leadership, they don't really like a lot of changes, and they do want to give you, they want to be the people to give you a stamp of approval, and you cannot deviate from the rules and guidelines. So just beware. I don't want to discourage you from Norhill, especially if you've really fallen in love. You just need to know what you are signing up for. So then we have the East Heights, West Heights, and South Heights. There's just going to be a lot of kind of the same structures, but also a lot of different structures. But most of these are pier and beam houses. They're mostly wooden pier and beam or brick pier and beam. And then of course, this is Heights Boulevard here, and there's an esplanade in the middle with a really beautiful walking trail. And again, just know that if you are planning any major changes to this historic property that you are buying, you are going to have to get approval. And if, as what I said earlier in this video, if you don't like being told what to do, then do not buy a property in a historic district, because people are going to tell you what to do with your property, whether you like it or not. So it's just better that you know. I do love old houses, and so I don't want to discourage you. And then we have up here, hold on one second. Sorry. And then we have Starkweather. It's very small, and Starkweather is a weird name for Houston, but this is just the last name of the person that subdivided this land. And kind of just a side note, actually, sorry, we skipped one that I think is important to go over. This is called Near Northside. And you kind of get the same feel of the Heights in Near Northside, but you're just on the other side of I-45. And I think if you are looking for an investment opportunity, or you're looking to snatch up a property for like $3 and then be able to sell it for like $1 million in the future, I think that this is a high likelihood of being able to achieve even a fraction of that, because just remember that there are already a ton of people that live over here, and there's already been a lot of houses that have been bought and renovated, and so the potential for return on value is not really there, because you're not gonna be able to pick it up for super cheap. But here, there's a lot of people that still don't necessarily want to live on that side of 45. And that just depends on your opinion as a Houstonian. A lot of native Houstonians don't want to live on that side because it's historically a pretty rough area. But I will say I've observed some significant improvements in the last 5 years. And Houston is so rapidly changing that it's almost impossible to keep tabs on every little nook and cranny of the city unless you regularly drive it every 3 to 6 months. So again, if you want an opportunity to make a great investment, then you might want to consider Near Northside. And then we have Main Street and Market Square Historic District. So you're if you've looked at if you've seen my other videos, you'll know that downtown is really not residential except in high rises. Now, this is a historic district, and one of my favorite bars of all time is now closed, but it was called Public Works. I loved Public Works, and it was in this beautiful old, I think, Art Deco building that used to be the Water District headquarters. And I think it's since closed. Of course, I don't really go to bars very often. But another great bar over here is called the Watch Shop. And then, of course, I think the oldest bar in Houston is over in this historic district as well. So any residential communities that you're going to see in this specific little area are going to be the older apartment buildings that have been restored, or perhaps a hotel that is historic, like the Lancaster Hotel. As a Pier and Beam member, we do have some events in the historic downtown buildings, and we did have a happy hour at the beautiful Lancaster Hotel. And then this is a National Historic District. Oh, this is a post office. I actually recently just found this website and I find it fascinating. Of course, I'm a total nerd when it comes to this, so I'm probably might be alone, but you're here with me, so maybe I'm not alone. And then this little, okay, Freedmanstown again. And then down here, hold on. There is kind of like a little mid-century community. I don't see it on here, but it's called Glenbrook Valley. Where is Glenbrook Valley? Strange, it doesn't seem to be on here. Aha, there it is. It was hiding behind my face. Glenbrook Valley. So these are mid-century houses, and I actually drove all of this a couple weeks ago because I was like absolutely captivated by all of the beautiful mid-century modern houses and mid-century ranches that were put here in the 50s when Houston was exploding with the space age exploration movement. This is in close proximity or close to the Space Center because it's very easy access to I-45, which takes you down to NASA. And one thing that's really important to note is, unfortunately, I hate to point this out, but look at the proximity to Hobby. This is a Southwest hub. This is one of the 2 international airports in Houston. So unfortunately, this beautiful old neighborhood is basically neighbors with an international airport here in Houston, which if you're fine with planes, then great. But if you don't like planes, then just know that if you want to buy a house in Glenbrook Valley, that you will likely just have to get used to planes flying over your house on a regular basis. But if you love mid-century modern, this you should look over here. Just depending, there might be something like incredible on the market. It just depends on the window of time that you're looking. And then if you are still interested in mid-century houses, this whole pocket over here has a treasure trove of mid-century properties, even up all the way over here. There's a lot of mid-century built, and just notice that none of it is designated because you do have to have a 67% resident approval rate in order to designate a neighborhood as a historic district. And while a historic district does preserve the integrity of the neighborhood, you also do give up the ability to change your house as you see fit. So it is a give and a take on the protection. Oh, okay, so I just wanted to touch on the Astrodome. It is on the National Register of Historic Sites. Unfortunately, even though this incredible piece of engineering, just like perfection, it is on the National Register of Historic Places, but this historic designation actually does not protect it from being demoed. And if you can freaking believe it, people want to demo the Astrodome, and it blows my mind. And if you've made it this far in my video, I've actually included the link to sign the petition to save the Astrodome. I also am involved in the Astrodome Conservancy because I think the Astrodome is such a cool building. There is such an incredible history around it, and it really put Houston on the map worldwide. And in my opinion, it's one of two world recognized buildings in Houston. It's the Alamo in San Antonio, and it is the Astrodome in Space City, Houston. So that's my spiel about the Astrodome. Let's just take a little bit more time to kind of do an overview. Now, each little area definitely has its quirks. These are going to be, there's going to be a lot of brick here. So these houses would have been built in the 20s and 30s, with some being built in like the 1910s or the teens. So you're going to have a lot of brick structures here, not a lot of pier and beam. Now you might have a rare basement or a crawl space, but these are largely going to be brick houses. These are largely going to be wooden structures. For the exception, I would say, of Courtland Place, those houses are mostly brick. There just was a higher level of wealth that went into the Courtland Place when it was originally developed in the 30s. I mean, these people were building mansions in the midst of a Great Depression in America. So there just was a lot more funds available when Courtland Place was being developed. These are going to be wooden structures, largely wooden, but also brick. I think that there's an even mix of brick structures versus wooden structures. This is largely going to be wooden, with, I would say, 30% is going to be brick structures. Most of the houses, again, are going to be wooden. Most of this are wooden structures. Unless you're on Heights Boulevard, then a lot of these are brick houses. They're scattered really between wooden and brick. No like heavy leaning either way. And these are largely going to be wooden structures. And then, as I mentioned in another video, this is all going to be post World War II. Sorry, pre. This is before World War II. And then when the soldiers came home from the war, they needed a lot of housing and very fast. And so they went just outside of Houston at the time to Garden Oaks and Oak Forest. And you'll notice that none of this has any historic districts, but these are all post-war houses. They're going to be cute, tiny little wooden and brick structures, mostly on a slab. A lot of them have been knocked down and McMansions have been built. If you buy an original construction house in this general area, you can get in as cheap as like the mid-4s. For an original structure, it might go up to $1 million or $1.2 million, just depending on how fancy the property is. Now, if you get new construction, you're looking at probably over 1.5. Generally speaking, this is a general overview. Please don't grill me on exact number figures. These are all just value ranges. Now, another old part of Houston that is not historically protected is River Oaks, but you'll do see a smattering of dots. So this area is River Oaks. It is like the #1 most expensive of all of Houston. The #2 is Tanglewood, that is just over here, developed in the 50s. But River Oaks was developed in the late 20s, mid to late 30s and 40s. And these are going to be like palatial mansions, especially this portion of River Oaks. These lots can go up to over an acre. And there is just a very, very, very wide variety of style of construction and time built, because people were acquiring lots in all different sections of time. Or someone could have acquired a lot in 1955. They might have bought a 38 construction house in 1955 and decided to demo it and build a beautiful mid-century masterpiece, which mid-century masterpieces can still be found in River Oaks, but brand new, insane modern houses, or there's even like Tudor Revival. There's all kinds of cool architecture styles, but this is definitely the most expensive part of Houston. You can get in for $2 something. If you're on the outskirts, maybe 1.8, maybe 1.5, depending on the condition and the size of the property. But these properties can go all the way up to like 20 million. I think there was a property on the market that hit the market like 24 million. These properties do end up sitting on the market for quite some time because there's a very small pool of buyers that can afford that price point. But actually, I just toured an incredibly beautiful historic home in River Oaks, and it is on the market currently for 15 million. I think actually this is it. Let me see if I can zoom in. Sorry that this is not like lickety split. Very, very. Oh, it doesn't tell me the exact name, but this property is currently on the market for 15 million, and it is a beautiful plantation style home that has been recently restored. And I could spend a lot longer going over the history, but again, I just meant this to be a brief overview of what you can expect if you are looking for a historic home in Houston. And I really specialize in houses built before 1970. While the product is high quality, there's just a different skill set that comes with helping people acquire these properties. And even when it comes to selling these properties, you need to market these properties to the right pool of buyers. And when purchasing a property, you need to know what type of inspections that you need to have and what's a really big deal and what's not a big deal. And you need to be conscious of budget. Also, you need to be conscious of tax value. Some of these older neighborhoods can be in a lower percentage of a lower tax rate, or some of them can be in a higher tax rate. And now if you buy a $15 million beautifully restored home, you are going to have to pay taxes on your new $15 million purchase, your new/old purchase. So anyway, I hope this video was helpful. And again, if you've made it to the end of this video and you have been researching ahead of a big move to Houston, I would be honored for the opportunity to earn your business and help you find the neighborhood that best fits your needs and your lifestyle. Again, my name's Miriam Hijazi. I've been helping people buy and sell residential real estate for over 12 years, and I have been loving Houston since 1987. I shall see you on the next one. Bye.